En fait, pour moi, cette question dépend de l'horizon temporel, en fait. Parce que si on part du principe que l'endettement, c'est juste un impôt transféré dans le temps, donc ça revient au même. Donc si on emprunte aujourd'hui, demain on sera obligé d'augmenter l'impôt pour pouvoir rembourser. Donc voilà, ça dépend si on préfère de faire face à un endettement ou bien de transférer le paiement de l'endettement aux générations futures. Thank you.
I get you. Yeah. Yeah. The more you take, the more you will still need to pay. But I like the analogy of poison, because it is either a slow death or a quick, less painful death. Both of them are painful. It's just a choice. I don't think TJNA requires any introduction. If you have not interacted with TJNA, please look us up. I'm with TJNA, and glad for the opportunity to be here with you. But the question that I have now here, and I wish I had put a poll on it, for Africa to develop, we have several options. And yesterday, Jane took us through this. She asked us, we have these options. We have debts, borrow until you cannot borrow anymore. In fact, that option says that when you see your president or the head of your government exiting the country, you know they will talk about many things. They will do shopping. But the one thing they will come back with is a what? A loan. In fact, I remember the former president of a country that is neighboring us on this side called Kenya, when they took the trip outside, Kenyans issued a public disclaimer and said, you know the way they will say when you are no longer supposed to contract on behalf of some company. They issued a public disclaimer and said, if he enters into any loan, please know that it does not belong to who? We the Kenyans. Option number one. But option number two is borrow. Not borrow. Get aid. You get so much aid that whenever they see you walking through the door, they know automatically this person has come with a begging basket. And the best way we can make them go back is promise them a school, promise them a college, promise them some food, and once you do that, they will be happy. In fact, I saw recently an analysis, and they were saying a president of a country that is doing a lot of visits out there, even those that he's going to visit, know that once he comes and you promise him a few things here and there, he walks away happy. Option number two. Option number three is this thing that you called poison, poison, poison. Others will call it profit, profit, profit. Those that are very learned will call it public-private partnerships. It means nothing. It's just being pushed down our throats to tell us that for us to develop, the best way to do it is hand over everything to the private sector. They are more organized. They are better than us. They look for the profits, and they will ensure bridges function, schools function, and the health sector functions. When we talk to MPs, we tell them, whenever you see these deals, please know, it's simply saying the government is unable to do it. Give it to profit makers to do it and make more profit at it. DRM, we'll talk about it a little bit more. And it's good for us to actually look at those options and what it means for us. These are statistics which we could have gotten them from anywhere else, but I chose to pick them not from our friends, because our friends might lie to us. I chose to pick them from those that might tell us the bitter truth, even though we might not like it. This is how ODA, Official Development Assistance, is looking. This is a period from about 2012 to around 2022. And then I looked at the FDI, what we are promised every day, investments coming into our country, and what is being sold to us is that Africa cannot develop if you do not have investors coming from outside. And I tracked the statistics, and this is what it looks like. You can see it's almost a straight line for the last 10 years when it comes to FDI. And then you can look at the others, the loans and the ODA. You can see how it keeps going up and down. These statistics are important, but let's also see a particular case. Please.
Sorry, I just want to find out, in your statistics for FDI, were you also tracking the debt component or the equity component, the debt and the equity component?
So that was mostly the equity component. So we take a particular case of a country that is represented in this room, and we look at the statistics of FDI on that side and the amount of money lost through illicit financial flows, to actually ask ourselves, do we need that money or this man? Because you can clearly see that within that particular year in Zambia, all they received in FDI was 116M USD. But what they lost through tax evasion and tax avoidance is 8 times the FDI. As you are mulling over those statistics, let's also look at the tax to GDP ratio. And I went to the pain of looking up several countries that I knew were represented in this room. And I wanted to see what is the contribution of tax to their GDP. And this was in 2022. These are statistics from 2022. And you can clearly see how it's looking like across these countries. And this will be more important. You can pick a country here. When we look at the tax to GDP ratio, and then compare that to the debt to GDP ratio in that particular country. So I looked at this. I don't know how people feel, but if you take just one of these countries like Zambia, for example, and forgive me for not putting a percentage at the end, but you can see that at present, when it comes to growth of our GDP, our over-reliance on debt is very clear. This is 2022 statistics as well. Tanzania, where we are today, tax to GDP around 11.8%, debt to GDP 38%. You look at Malawi, look at the difference between their tax to GDP ratio and their debt to GDP ratio. Look at Zambia, the difference between how much tax is contributing to their growth and how much they are relying on debt for their growth. Look at Zim. They are doing better when it comes to their tax to GDP ratio, but also look at their debt to GDP ratio. Feels weird. But let's also go back to, I don't know whether this can allow me to go back. It can? Ah, good. I looked at the gross debt to GDP ratio, and I compared it to several regions. And I used statistics from none other but our very good friends who may not lie to us. And I looked at the trends. And I looked at this, and it felt weird. It didn't feel right. And these bars represent years. So we are tracking the years 2020 to the year 2025. And then Central Africa, East Africa, North, South, and West. And I looked at this figure, and I was wondering, what is this? And I wanted to compare this with development across the regions and ask myself, does it mean that because we have higher debt, we have better development? Or because we have lower debt, we have more less development? I was wondering, what do you think about when you look at all this? How does it feel for you? Remember, this is a marked exam. So, as you answer, does it mean that because this region is taking on more debt, they are more developed? This region. Yes, please, sir.
No, that's not what it means. But yet they are more developed. But they are more developed probably because the way they use their borrowed resources is more effective than in other regions.
Than these people?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
This is a marked exam, it's a bit unfair to not see like the GDP per capita, you know, something that gives the idea of development in those regions. So perhaps we should, you know, take this question out of the exam.
I know those students, eh? They say, please set the question differently. Yes, please, sir.
I'm also, like my brother Gabriel, thinking about the question of population sizes. So Botswana is about 2.5 million people. Namibia is in a similar range. Zimbabweans are about 17 million. And that's very much the picture in Southern Africa. When you come to East Africa, we are more populous. So maybe that has an effect as well. There's less to go around as opposed to Southern Africa, where there's more to go around for fewer people.
Okay. Let's move on to think about taxes for development. Oh, there was a hand. Please, I missed it.
My brother Andrew, there are countries that are populous in the south. Yeah.
South Africa.
Yeah, but also Namibia is not small. So, I don't know. I think for me, Francis, I would have said it has to do with the infrastructure you inherited independence. That counts a lot too. Because some people really, like former French colonies, work from nothing. And colonialism is bad. I don't wish it on anyone. But if I had an X on my head and I had to choose, I would still go with the damn British. Because they leave something.
Yeah, I still remember that conversation we had between who was a better colonizer. Yeah. Oh, who was worse and who was bad, eh? Yeah. Let's talk about tax and development. And when we do the assessment later today, question number 6A is going to be asking you to tell us what is the first importance of tax for development. So follow closely. Number one, we said we have several options for development. And we said we have aid, we have debt, we have PPPs, and then we say domestic resource mobilization. Those that work on tax will tell you that we believe tax is a better and slower poison, if we are to use those words, is a better option for development because of several reasons. We will unpack them, although for this session, we are trying to teach a master's course within 1.5 hours. For the first reason, we use an R, and we'll have 5 of them, is that tax gives government money directly. It comes from your pocket, from your salary, from corporate income, and it gives government resources directly. And therefore, the first R, when you answer question number 6A, will be resources. My people will call it pesa. Others will call it, in your language, what do you call money? Chele. Aha. Another ego. Egu. Aha. Senti. Aha. Another one. Kudi. Aha. Another one. Money. Money, yes. Gives government money directly into their pockets. But the second reason is this thing that we call representation. And we say there exists a social contract between the governed and their government. And those that went to law school are told that the elements of a contract include consideration. And consideration between the government and those that it governs is secured using money. And that money is what we call tax. In fact, for the existence of a governance system, it will require the government, it will require the governed, it will require those that are governed to pay for them to be governed. That's where taxes come in. The other, that is the representation, the second R. The third R is what we call redistribution. Redistribution means for those that have, something is taken away from them so that those that do not have, they get something. And we actually say, because you earn a salary and your parents are somewhere in the village, something is taken from your salary so that we can pay a doctor, so that when your parents go to the local clinic, they can access that doctor at a cheaper price than if they were to access a private doctor. So redistribution helps to move resources from those that have to those that don't have. However, the good book says, even those that do not have, whatever they have will be taken away from them. That is the system that we are operating in now. That even if you do not have, that little that you have will be taken away from you. But the fourth R, which is very important, we started with the first R. The first R was resources, money, pesa. The second one was representation, social contract. There exists a social contract between the governed and their government. It is sealed using resources and money. Representation. The third one was redistribution, that those that do not have, even that which they have, will be taken away from them and given to other people. And then repricing. One of the principles of taxation is that you can use tax to increase and decrease the prices of certain goods and services depending on whether those things are important, they are needed, they are luxurious, or you can use taxes to impose a burden on those that impose a burden on us. I will say that again. You can use taxes to reprice goods and make some goods cost higher than others, or make some services cost higher than others, or you can use tax to actually impose a burden on those that impose a burden on us. For example, those that smoke impose a burden on our health system, and we need to get them because they are engaging in a habit that imposes a burden on us. We cannot go around whipping them for smoking, so we tax them. And most of you like those taxes because you call them sin taxes. That dependent on the magnitude of your sin, you pay more tax. You sin less, you pay less tax. The more you sin and the more you enjoy your life, we tax you more. That is repricing. The use of tax to adjust the pricing of goods and services. And therefore, certain goods are considered luxurious, like bottled water. So there is an excise duty on it. Other goods are also ranked as luxurious, like this thing you see on this side, which most of you like enjoying. And I used Kilimanjaro so that to encourage you before you go back. Please pay some taxes here. Pay some sin taxes where? Consume that one. You pay some tax. Behind, oh, there's no konyagi here. Behind this one that you like a lot, there's another one hidden here. If you cannot see the name, it means your age is catching up with you. This one here. But those that know it very well, know it that it is called? You see, this room is full of those that pay sin taxes. Because I personally cannot see. But those that love paying sin taxes can see even that which does not look very clear. Oh, it increases your sharpness, eh? Oh, I didn't know. I didn't know. Oh, you can see Mosi. Oh, Mosi. Elijah. Had you seen the Mosi? Oh, you had seen it, eh? Okay. Oh, the Serengeti. Indeed, this thing increases sharpness. You can see. So that is the fourth R. And the last one is this thing that we call reparations. We believe now, previously we used to talk about 4 of them, but we've changed and said we can now use tax systems to ensure that those that have imposed a burden on the global south can be able to pay for it through climate justice, for example, and the burden they imposed on us during colonialism. When you answer the question number 6A, you will have 5 R's instead of 4. You will have resources, you will have representation, you will have redistribution, you will have repricing, reparations. Good. That's the importance of tax. But then, all of you are now asking, okay, we pay tax. Tax is good. It is the better option. But show me the money. Where is the money when it comes to tax? I know that is the question you wanted to ask me, but I came prepared for it. Taxes are good. It is a better poison, but where the hell is the money? I'll show you. This thing, illicit financial flows, a big problem when it comes to tax and loss of money. And I'll show you some statistics. But I like showing this photo because there's no better way of representing IFFs but showing this big hole where it has been dug up and showing where it has gone, because we know where it has gone. So the more we continue digging this part of the globe, we know where it's going. But others will say the heavier pile should be on this side than on this side. Do you agree? These people have a bigger pile than this. Please come in.
I have a question. I didn't know that evasion and avoidance were considered illicit. I only knew money laundering was illicit. And I'm just wondering, so for example, if someone evades for really good reasons, why are they being categorized under with money launderers?
Good. You asked exactly the question we are coming to. So we'll come to that. Aha, yes, please.
You asked a question, bring the piles back. You were asking whether it should be more there than...
More here than here?
Yes.
More here than here?
Yes. No. It should be just like you are showing it, because the thing is, those on my left know how to conceal what they dig. Because they hide it well before carrying it there. That's why you may think they have less, but
it's a lot.
It's a lot.
Okay. Yes, please, sir.
Yeah, now that China increased trade volumes from a significant size of African countries with China, are we still the same in terms of illicit financial flows, the destination, or China remains as muted as ever?
That's a very good question, because it means we need to change this pile, and also extend this map towards this side, to show, because it is going to Hong Kong and the other places. But let's talk about this. Yes, please, Job.
Mine is on the previous slide, not on the piles, the previous one. That the reparations.
Okay.
And it's just to understand, I mean, like where we are coming from to say taxes can be used as a form of reparations, especially when you're talking about colonialism, climate injustices. Because what we are seeing is that climate injustice or climate justice is actually being, through taxes, is being used to punish like those who are least responsible. When you look at, you know, even the implication of the International Task Force, the taxes they're proposing, being, I mean, as a continent that is a net importer will be punished. If you look at things like the carbon border adjustment mechanisms, the carbon tax, that actually the EU is imposing on goods produced from here, you know, it is us that are being punished, because it's just to understand that argument on, from a climate perspective and using tax as a form of reparations. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you got it very correctly, that our argument now is that the tax system as set up, unless it is set up to ensure that we do not continue losing more, and it is set up in a way that actually helps us to address those injustices, not to continue having more injustices, then the system as set up will be wrong. And therefore, in our push for reforms of the international financial system, one of the arguments that we are advancing a lot is that if the system is not going to be sensitive to these issues, and if it is not going to be used to address these issues, then we are not moving anywhere. And therefore, in our push for the use of the tax system as a form of reparation, is to set up the international tax system to address these injustices and not to continue perpetrating them. And that's why, for example, we are having serious challenges with the climate financing models that exist today, because as you know, a ton of carbon in Nairobi or in Arusha is currently being priced 30 times less than the same ton of carbon in a place like Bonn or another city out there. And all this is, wish we had more time to discuss the system, but all this is linked to that system.
We can have this conversation, but
Yeah.
I think there needs to be a bit of thinking in terms of developing the argument on tax and reparations.
Yeah.
When you look at the whole concept around reparations, and when you look at the concepts around the climate justice, it's not from a tax perspective. It's purely reparations. Because when you're bringing in a tax, it's more like, you know, you're taxing someone to, you know, the reparations you're basically paying back. You're not taxing for them, so you're not collecting taxes as a payback. I think it's something that needs to be discussed a little bit more, and so that we know how to develop that linkage between reparations and tax, because it's actually those who are least responsible that are suffering when it comes to taxation. The aviation, the maritime tax, for example, that's maybe might come up. It is those who are net importers that are going to suffer more on that. When you look at the shipping industry, when you look at, you know, all the carbon taxes, it's actually not those who are responsible that are actually
will pay.
Yeah, it is those who are least responsible that are going to pay. So it's a bit, for me, maybe we can have that conversation a little bit more.
Yeah. And those that have been following the discussion in Kenya, presently now, the taxes that are being imposed on us are actually doing the opposite. Instead of us being compensated by those that are ultimately responsible, we are now imposing a carbon tax on the same citizens who are affected. And that is being done. Anyway, let's not dwell there in the interest of time so that we can get to the crux of it. But we can definitely have that conversation. Remember, this is a master's course in 1.5 hours, and I have a few minutes remaining. Illicit financial flows, illegal or illicit. For a long time, our emphasis has been on this part that is there on that side. That whatever we label is what has been illegal. And so we bunch everything on this side and say, whatever has been the origin of the money that ends up being lost, the origin of that money, we have always said it is abuse of power and corruption. It is illegal. We have criminalized it in our laws. We have even established institutions to tackle that. Money laundering. Today, we have institutions at the national, at the regional, even at the international level to tackle this, because the view is it is illegal, we need laws, we need to tackle it. However, there's a line here, and it's also a thin line, between what is illegal and what is illicit. What is illicit are things like tax avoidance. And tax avoidance and tax evasion sound very similar. But tax evasion is illegal because it will usually be in the law. But tax avoidance is actually, can call it legal, but it's illicit because it's just using the law to circumvent and lower your taxes or the taxes payable. And therefore, that is why along this line, this thin line, you have things like tax abuse, tax evasion, tax avoidance. And our view has been, for a long time, we have been told to focus here. This is the old view. But now, it's important for us to see that the amount of money that is lost through IFFs has changed. Corruption is now contributing about 5%. Illegal, not illicit. Criminal activities. And criminal activities here, I'm talking about those that engage in drug trade, those that you know, those that engage in this thing of getting animals and their products. What do we call it? Trafficking, eh? Wildlife trafficking falls here. And then the origin of the money that is ending up lost through IFFs, 65% is through commercial activities, not illegal, mostly illicit. So tax avoidance, using the law, using tax loopholes for you to lower your payable taxes. It's a huge issue. And therefore, question number one was, show me the money. Where is the money? Number one, we are losing the money through illicit financial flows. Yes, please.
Yeah, on the previous slide. So when we say commercial activities and illicit because it's not illegal, let us also remember apartheid was once legal. Slavery was once legal. Colonialism was once legal. So it's more about power relationships.
Nothing further to add there. It is legal, but illicit. But the number two problem that has made us not have enough money is digital taxation. How we tax digital services. I know some people in the room here have a Netflix account. How many? This is a marked exam. So let's see. How many people have a Netflix account? Has anyone bothered to check the receipt when they send it to you? When you pay, then they send you. You didn't check, eh? You wanted to avoid the heart pains. Has anybody checked? Because it will tell you. Okay, where is Netflix registered? Huh? Somewhere in the US? Somewhere in California? Silicon Valley. Just check your receipt when you pay for Netflix, whether it is going to say anything about US, California, Silicon Valley. Just check. It will tell me. Says where? So you even checked, eh? Are you shocked? It says Ireland. Why? Why Ireland? This is a US company. Tax haven. Are you sure? In a way, they are. A tax haven. You are sure? 100%. Remember, this is a marked exam, eh? So you walk, you tread carefully, eh? Yeah, 100%. Okay. How many people have used Airbnb? There are people who are lifting their hands halfway because they're wondering, what was I doing? Where was I? Airbnb. Or booking.com. Just check your receipt. Check where the money goes, and then compare that to where the company is registered. These people have been able to negotiate for themselves an international tax system that allows them to put their money where it's going to be safe. Meanwhile, our governments are struggling to tax. The most recent government to impose a tax that is related to the digital services sector is Zambia. Zambia, they gave themselves a Christmas present in the year 2023. They imposed a new law to tax the digital services sector on 22nd of December 2023. I looked at the law when we were going through it with MPs in Zambia this weekend, and we asked them, this law, you imposed a digital tax? Yes. Who are you taxing? Are you taxing the digital company, or are you taxing yourselves? They said, please tell us. Then we went back to the law. We checked. They have imposed a VAT on digital services. Who pays VAT? Is us, eh? So I told them, so you looked around, you wondered how you are going to tax the digital services sector. You thought, we do not have enough taxes. Let us tax ourselves more. Zambia. Digital sector. Instead of taxing the right people, we are taxing the wrong people. Problem number 2, well, show me the money. Problem number 3, how to tax multinationals. Has any one of you ever worked for these beautiful institutions? Who? Hey, please don't check my LinkedIn. Eh? It might get me pushed out of the room. But let me show you how a typical multinational looks like. This is not a figure that we invented. This is a company that operates in Zambia. It also operates in Tanzania, operates in Malawi, Netherlands, Mauritius, Jersey, wherever. Mozambique, Swaziland, South Africa, Mali. One company. I don't want to name that name over there because I might need a visa one day. But this is the parent, what we call the ultimate parental entity. And it is linked to all these entities. These guys here in Zambia, they farm their sugar in a place called Mazabuka. When you're going into Mazabuka, they write, welcome to Mazabuka, the sweetest town in Zambia. They have made billions in that small town. But you walk there, you find nothing except sugarcane plantations. They have been moving money through these subsidiaries that you see, Mauritius and wherever else. Ireland, you just mentioned it. It's somewhere here. You also mentioned there's Netherlands, there's Mauritius. There's a reason why corporates operate like this. And they operate like this not because of anything else, to make sure that their profits remain intact and untaxed. And therefore, tax is a good thing. But the biggest problem that we have is problem number 3, how to tax corporates. If we had time, would have done a little bit more about how to tax corporates. The other one is our tax systems. Yes, please.
I'm looking at problem number 3, challenge number 3,
Yes, please.
on taxing multinationals. And essentially, they are using the law, structuring their business to avoid paying taxes in a certain way. So how does this challenge contribute to the first one of IFFs? Or, you know what I'm trying to say? If those two challenges not actually the same, this one integrating into the first.
You got it very correctly. That, remember, we said 63% is contributed to by what? Commercial activities. It is the operations of people like this, that company that we named. However, they do it very legally because they have experts who study our laws and advise them how to do it. Those experts are usually our best sons and daughters who are paid very well to ensure that companies can continue operating this way and not paying their fair amount of tax.
I think they also come up with the laws.
Oh, they influence laws big time, big time. And I can tell you that for free because look at every time there's consideration of anything related to your finance laws. The people who put in the inputs, who bring the inputs, are these guys. I don't want to name them. But the other problem number 4, please come in. Please come in.
I think then I'm struggling with what you've said. I'm struggling then with the redistributive aspect of tax. Because then it's not making sense.
Good. It's a principle. As to whether it works, as to whether it works is a serious, serious problem. And that is why there is this as a main issue here. Because how we have designed our systems, we have made our systems so inefficient, they do not adhere to the basic principles. We do not raise enough resources through tax. We think that we should tax our people more than we should tax the corporates. In fact, we have what we call a fair tax monitor as one of our products, and we look at how our tax systems designed. And we have seen overwhelmingly most countries that are in this room here today, your system can be said to be a regressive tax system because you impose more taxes on citizens, you impose more taxes on people that you are not supposed to be taxing, and less taxes on the corporates. And therefore, when you ask me, where is the money if tax is a good thing, is lost here. Please come in, Sharon. Please use your mic.
Yeah, when it comes to, when it comes to the issue of double taxation, like on immigrants, does it fall under regression taxation?
For individuals. Yeah, it could fall there because a regressive tax system has those characteristics where you are taxing, somebody twice or thrice, but meanwhile, those that are supposed to be paying their fair amount of tax are not paying their fair amount of tax. And therefore, regressive means unfair. It means we have an overemphasis on taxes that are not bringing about equality. Yeah.
Sorry to do this, but so does globalization then enable the regressive taxation systems?
There's a link.
In that regard.
Yeah, there's a link. There's a link. But I put globalization here as a separate point because globalization is an emerging challenge of our tax systems, which we are not developing proper laws to help us with. So, for example, I put it here to say that today now people work across borders, that today you can be based in Tanzania but employed by an institution that is based in South Africa and they pay your salaries through your South African account or wherever else. And so I put it here to say that in the design of our tax systems, we are not responding to emerging challenges such as globalization properly. And therefore, instead of, for example, taxing corporates or taxing multinationals better, we think that we should tax expatriates more because they are easier to tax. It is easier to see their salaries. They will be more tax compliant. And regressive tax systems have those characteristics. They go for the taxes that are easiest to administer. And the taxes that are easiest to administer are income taxes, which are personal income taxes. Because actually the burden of collecting that tax is not on the government. You tell the employer, everyone you have employed, once you pay their salaries, deduct this amount and remit it to us. Easy and straightforward. Try that with the that crazy map I showed you of that company. You won't know what their profits are. You will not know what the expenses are. You will not know which accounts they use. And therefore, regressive tax systems are just enabled because our governments go for the taxes that are easiest to administer. Yes, please, come in.
Sorry, just to add, I think in addition to what you're saying, one important dimension is also the narrative of how taxation is actually used as an instrument to facilitate globalization, right? So we've been talking about issues of foreign direct investment, public-private partnerships, neoliberal policies and liberalization. And I think that's the other reason why designing tax systems that work or that can capture the revenues that are generated by multinational corporations becomes very difficult, because it's then counterintuitive to the narrative, right? Because we say, remove your tax, provide the tax incentives, the tax holidays for your foreign direct investment to come in, which is part of globalization, because then the argument is we're going to move up the value chain like we were taught yesterday with the Siatini presentation. So it's counterintuitive, which makes it that doubly challenging to understand, for governments to then figure out how do you tax an MNC while at the same time you're being told to create the incentive structure. So it's also an issue of narrative and how we view our role as a continent in globalization, because we are net exporters in terms of the globalization agenda, right? We don't actually have the capability to tax. So it's just to add on what you're saying as well.
Please come in.
Just one other point on this illicit versus illegal, what Gabriel, you were saying. So in addition to how this came about was the calculations that were done by quite a number of academic civil society organizations on it being a willful decision by high net worth individuals or multinational corporations to deliberately undercut or deliberately bend the laws to breaking point in developing countries to not pay your tax liabilities in that jurisdiction. So that's why there's also that differentiation between illegal and illicit. And in the early 2000s, all the way until the Mbeki panel report of 2015 was written, the argument around illicit was on the issue of, there was an ethical argument that was being made, that companies, multinational companies, high net worth individuals were acting in an immoral way to avoid paying taxes in those jurisdictions. And that is why the percentages become then very important. We were then being distracted into looking at particularly the 5%, and not the 65% that was actually being done in an unethical, immoral sort of way. Sorry.
Yeah, just to add another layer on the issue of redistribution. So it's not only that we suffer from a regressive tax system from a revenue perspective, but also when distribution is being done, it should be that those taxes that have been collected should be directed towards the marginalized groups or marginalized areas. But we are now seeing instances now where the little that is collected is deployed towards infrastructure that is meant to subsidize the service, the interest of capital, the same capital that is not paying tax. So it's vis-a-vis investment, I think, in public in infrastructure. I will not say public infrastructure, versus also public investment in services that are pro people. And it is the same argument again that comes when it comes to representation. I'll not go to the reparation side and the representation. Yes, we are told that because you pay, you would think that you have got the greater say. But democracy is now dollarcracy. Those that are not paying taxes, you've got influence in terms of also how democracy is being done. So the social contract for representation is something now that is severely questioned. That is it really worth it? Then the second issue is the third issue now, looking at the issue of sin taxes. To be honest, when it comes to the environment, we have now come to realize that there is no cost to it. And in the taxes that we put are very marginal. It's like, for the lack of better word, putting lipstick on a pig and say, yes, you are making it beautiful. But it's not, does not work.
Perfect. Nothing to add there. Putting lipstick on a what? On a pig. Problem number 5, as we conclude, is this issue of the system, what we call the international financial system. We said IFFs, big problem. Taxing the digital sector, big issue. But this is also a very important issue here, that the tax system as we know it today, set up somewhere in the 60s, we have been trying, there has been pushes over the years to change the system. And the system was created with several things in mind. Number 1, it was not created for us, it was created for them. Number 2, it was not designed to protect any of our interests. It was created to protect their interests, business-wise, any other way you might want to think about it. It was also designed to ensure that there is an unrestricted flow of capital and resources from the north, from the south to the north. And that is why you will hear that the playbook, for example, by the OECD is that you cannot have any restrictions on capital outflows. If somebody has invested, they need to take it out. They will also tell you that you cannot impose a ban on the export of certain natural resources, because that is against, they call them WTO principles or what? They'll say you cannot as a country. So if you have some resources, the globe has a right to access them. That's the system that was created. It was also created without us. We were not there. We were not on the table. At present, they will say we are on the table. But only 27 African countries today are involved in those negotiations with the OECD on what we can call an international tax system. And lastly, it was not created with the mind of how it's going to be implemented here. It is unnecessarily complicated. Even our best tax administrators, for example, whenever they are confronted with the implementation of some of those rules, they prefer not to implement because it is expensive, it is impossible to understand, and it may not even have any benefit to the country. That is the system that we have. And the question is it really broken? We have come up with a new argument that it is not broken. It was designed to function that way. Yes, please.
Thank you, Francis. I think in what we are saying, we often forget that when because this thing has been going on from colonialism. It's just that UNECA studied 1980 to 2010. They couldn't go far back. But we forget that they planned for 4 years because the Berlin Conference was 1884 to 1888. I know most people think it was just 1886. That conference took over for 4 years. But here's another important meeting which I hope young people are going to note and go and research. So Ghana was the first to be so-called free in 1957. I'm told it's actually not Ghana. It's some country, I think Sudan, something like that. Be that as it may, they met again 29 to 31 May 1954 in a town called Bilderberg in the Netherlands. They have been meeting every year. It's a secret meeting. So they know we are clever. We know about the Berlin Conference. This is a secret meeting where all of them collide. When we say captains of industry, we literally mean all of them. So I agree with you. The system was designed, and they meet to evaluate, to plan every year, while we are talking in silos and not really planning and coming on board together. So I think just on that, I appreciate what Aphrodite is doing. This movement building is the way we should be going. Thanks.
Yeah, please, Jen, then we'll come to you.
Thank you so much, Francis. And maybe when we talk about the financial system, it's not just the financial system, it's a system, an entire system. Let me give you an example. When you talk about even that is the way it's created, you know, it can be replicated, and it has been replicated in the trade, you know, in the trade system, in the industrial system, in the way, for example, they give the conditionalities on the loans, like the outflow of resources. They know the resources have to go. So they ensure that in all those systems, the trade system, it's there, you know, because, for example, it's in the free trade agreements where they say, don't put export taxes. They want the resources to flow. On the conditionalities on the loan, open up your capital account. Investment system, they say, you make the money, let it go out. You know, so, you know, that intertwined system.
Yeah, please.
I'd like to pick from, I think, something that Crystal mentioned about the culture of economics is us to redefine and re-articulate. And just thinking about what you talked about, reparations, and then the other 4 R's that you told us are principles. I'm just curious to find whether through the tax justice movement, there've been decolonial approaches that have been adopted and other principles that are maybe Afrocentric or fit within the African context that then we have adopted or that we see would be much better than these 4 R's that we have been taught when it comes to textbook approaches. Jen yesterday told us to rethink a lot of the things that we are taught. So are there approaches that perhaps TGNA or the tax justice movement has adopted and language that has been adopted that can counter the narratives that we have been taught? Yeah.
Very, very good question. I saw a hand. Sir, please come in.
I was recently shocked to learn that the World Bank, the countries have shareholdings in the World Bank, different shares, which determines how...
Quotas. Yeah,
quotas, how they vote. And that there's, I think it's unwritten, agreement on who the president of both the World Bank and IMF, which countries they come from, with one having to be an American, and if you look at the record, it's clear, and then the president of the IMF comes from Europe. And indeed, if you look at the record, you see that pattern, which then questions what is world about the World Bank and what is international about the IMF.
The IMF, yeah. We are almost swearing you in as tax justice advocates. The questions you're asking, by the time we are done, apart from the certificates, please remind me to swear them in as tax justice advocates. Please come in.
I so much like the digging process. You remember that slide where they were digging and then spiraling? I want to reflect on this, looking at that. Did you see that on the map? There were no other place where they were digging? On that map? Is there another place where they are digging except from in Africa?
It's here.
It's only here. Why? I think this is an opportunity for us to see that that table you are talking about, the table where they fix all these things and decide for their own interests, is not the right table for us Africans on the buffet. Let us not go and line up toward a table where there's no good food for us, triple poison. But open another table, the African table. If you open the African table and start thinking on your own tax system at the African level, which you impose upon the others, they will run toward our table. So I think we should think further than just trying to be part of the discourse with OECD. Why should they be the one leading? Let us ask that question. Why?
Why? Why them? I wanted to come to this question of rethinking, reframing, a new approach. The system was set up in 1960. A lot of the principles we know today, even the principles that are told to our best tax administrators, all stem from this period. Before 2015, there has been a long process of trying to push for a new system. There was no success, there was no clarity. 2015 to 2021, there is now clarity on what are we pushing for when it comes to change, when it comes to reforms, when it comes to moving away from the OECD, when it comes to rethinking how we even do taxation. Which principles do we use? What wording, for example, do we use? It's been a long time coming, but we are finally there. There's a lot of clarity now on how we want to redo the international system, how we want to use existing principles, which ones we want to run away from, what we want to implement at the national level, what works for us as Africa, and what doesn't. It's a long process, but finally, we are somewhere. And that's why, apart from that, there's now a big push for a new, reimagined process of redesigning the international system. Also what we are calling the UN Tax Convention. It is not just a document, it is a process. It is not just for government, it is for everyone. It has not come as a result of the push by the West. It has actually come as a result of the push from within ourselves. And this is just one of the things that need to be changed. As Jane rightly mentioned, there's a whole link to all these systems. And before I forget, I must remind you that most countries, especially East and South, were first established as companies before they became countries. I must remind you that. What we now know as Zambia, as Zimbabwe, as Uganda, as even the Congo, those were first mapped out as companies, as places where companies could operate and get profits from. Then now we call it countries. Why do you form a company? Money, profit, resources. So what happens when you don't have money? Number one, you do what we said, retrogressive tax. When a government does not have enough money, it resorts to these things, to impose the retrogressive taxes because it needs money. When your debt repayment costs are too high, you do not have money to pay government workers, what do? Impose taxes that are easy to collect, that are easy to administer, that are almost guaranteed because you can tell within your country how many people are working. And you are able to compute and say, if we increase VAT on certain goods this year, we will get this amount of money. If we increase the income tax brackets, within certain brackets, this is what we will get. So more debt, less money, what do? Tax more, and you do not tax the corporates. You tax the people, retrogressive tax. But the second thing you will have is lack of development. The problems that you see now across our countries is less money, more debt, more tax, no development. What else do you see? You will see that crucial sectors like health and education are struggling to date in most countries because of that thing. More debt, more repayment, less money, retrogressive tax. Some statistics to take you to lunch with is that 25 countries in Africa today are spending more on interest repayments than on health. 7 countries are spending more on interest payments than on education. 751 million people now in Africa are living in countries that are spending more on debt repayments, interest repayments, than on education and health. I started by asking, between tax, higher tax, and higher debt, what is better? Most people voted higher debt than higher tax. But you voted it from the opposite side. And then you started qualifying your answer. I end by saying that it is not just about high tax. It is about how we design the tax system. Our tax systems now are struggling because of how they have been designed. So we do not have enough money. And because we do not have enough money for development, for health, for paying our salaries, the automatic result is get some debt. And because debt is also not so good around this time, then you design retrogressive taxes which guarantee the government quick money that they can be able to take immediately from your pocket. If you did not think that debt and tax were linked, just think about what we've discussed for the past 1.5 hours as you go for lunch. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, thank you very much, Francis, for that wonderful presentation. I think, so far we all agree today is quite packed, and despite it being packed, I think there's some amazing content that is being delivered. So with that said, we are about to go for lunch, but there's something that's standing between us and lunch. First thing, just an announcement. Kindly, as you go for lunch, when you come back, please come with your boarding passes. I think our finance officer, Fadzai, will need to make some arrangements for you. So kindly, as you come back, please come back with your passes. Then that's on. For our next session, we'll have breakouts. So maybe if Kanyisile can speak to it briefly before we break for lunch.
Thanks, John. So we are not coming back here. We are going straight to 2 breakaways, which we will divide quickly, and not by numbers, but by the alphabet Z and A, and then we will tell you what each one stood for. So we'll start with Jason as A, and then you can continue.
Z.
Just remember what you counted. A, Z, A, Z, A, Z. Yeah. Let's continue. Z. You won't be here. Z. Z, yes. Not 2 A's, so it's a Z, because she, you are Z, She won't be here, yes? A. Z. A. So all the A's stay. You are Z. You are, No, but you are leading a session, so what's yours? Z or A? Don't worry about the number. What session did you volunteer to set? Yes. So all the Zs will stay here. All the Zs are Zambia. And all the As are Africa. They are with John. John will show you. You'll be outside with nature. Huh? Huh? I don't know. You will talk to your people. So we won't tell you, please. You have 45 minutes. It's a very intensive exercise. So I'm not going to follow and say your time is up, your session is starting. John will just tell us what time we are starting. All the Africans, please, let's enjoy nature. All the Zambians, let's come and be confined in the room.
So I'm changing the group.
You can't change. John, how much do we have for that?
Yeah, so we'll begin the group works from 2:15. So let's try save a bit of time because we've lost a bit of time from the morning sessions that we had today.